The May 11th Early Learning Board meeting. We will begin with sharing of the mission, and Mari is going to be our mission sharer today. Mari?
Okay. Early Learning Board mission to support children's academic and lifelong well-being by directing and supporting the EOEL for an effective, coordinated, high-quality early learning system from prenatal to kindergarten entry.
Thank you, Mari. We'll take the roll call of attendance to ensure we have a quorum. Justina?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Okay, Iolani?
Aloha, eo.
Megan?
Here.
Ben?
Here.
May?
Here.
Peters is here. Napua?
Eo.
Mari?
Yeah.
Carrie?
Here.
Melody?
Aloha.
Dana?
Here.
Rochelle?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Okay. We have perfect attendance today. That's great. Thank you, everyone. We certainly have more than a quorum today so that we can proceed with our business. There are no particular announcements to make today. We have a fairly full agenda. So let's begin by taking a look at the minutes, and the chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. We have a motion to approve, please.
So moved. This is Kaiulani.
Thanks, Lenny. Is there a second?
This is Ben, I'll second.
Thank you. Take a minute to look at the minutes, and if there's any discussion, please go ahead and share your thoughts.
Sure.
Justina.
I had one quick correction, which is I did an announcement at the end of last meeting about the Kahawai Summit, and either I misspoke where it was incorrectly in the minutes that it was 320 participants versus the number, and there was like 380. So
Okay,
something like that. So if we could fix it back
fix the
to,
number.
yeah, 320.
320
Yeah.
is the number that it should be.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Justina. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote to approve the minutes, the April minutes with the change recommended by Justina related to the number of participants in the Kahawai Summit. Justina?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Okay, Iolani?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Ben?
Aye.
May?
Aye.
I vote aye. Napua?
Aye.
Mari?
Hi.
Carrie?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
The April minutes have been approved with the one amended change recommended by Justina. The next item on the agenda is the opportunity for public comment, which has a 2-minute time limit per speaker, and comments have to be related to the agenda items. You all have received the one piece of written testimony that came in by the deadline today from Terry Locke regarding HB 961. Is there any additional public testimony, or Terry, if you have things you want to add, this is the time you could do so.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to provide public comments. And yeah, before you have my written testimony, and this relates to, I think, item 4. Again, about, let me make sure I have it in front of me too. Item 4, which is the EOEL legislative session is over, and bill status. So to keep it short, I just want to say thank you again to the Early Learning Board members and the Executive Office on Early Learning staff in working with our executive and legislative branches to put more resources behind Act 46, universal access to high quality, accessible, and affordable preschool for children Hawaii's 3 and 4-year-old. I do want to say though that, I also want to say that I'm in support of high quality, accessible, affordable, mixed delivery preschool system, as we know that it draws upon the decades of expertise and infrastructure in our early care and education sector, including our DHS licensed centers, Head Start, public pre-K, public school pre-K, and community-based agencies. As we know, this offers families options, and that there are families that will continue to need full day, full year programs for their keiki. I want to thank you for the expansion of Preschool Open Doors and funding to more nationally accredited DHS licensed childcare centers and regulated family childcare homes. I am disappointed, though, that we weren't able to get the HB 547 HD1 SD2, which would have funded an infant toddler caregiver wage supplement pilot program through DHS. But we have always another year. We'll move forward on that. I want to also say I'm in support of the expansion of EOL public pre-K. However, I urge that we do this expansion intentionally and thoughtfully to maintain the 9.6 total benchmarks met based on the quality standards of NEAR and the quality controls established by EOL staff. Finally, I was a part of a panel with other higher ed folks in California, and we're talking about their expansion. They're doing a huge investment in universal pre-K known as their transitional kindergarten. And this panel that I was on also highlighted a study done in Tennessee by Dr. Dale Farron and other researchers at Vanderbilt University, and just conducted longitudinal study of Tennessee's public preschool program. You'll see some links to that. The main point to this is that without the quality standards and quality control, the investments made in preschool cannot be sustained to sustain the long-term positive outcomes. So just want to, in closing, just want to say I believe we have to design and develop a plan for a mixed delivery preschool system that's done without sacrificing the quality of services that our early care and education workforce provides to our keiki and families and communities across our state. Mahalo.
Thank you, Terry. Any other public comment to be offered at this time? Dana, anybody in the chat?
No one in the chat indicated.
Thank you. And we'll move on to item 4, which is the report from the Executive Office on Early Learning. I'll turn it over to Yuko and her staff. Yuko?
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll start with our legislative updates from Jordana.
Okay, just a few quick updates. So CNADA, which is the closure of the 2023 legislative session, was on Thursday, May 4th, last week. So I did indicate on the document the bills that had passed their final reading. So that includes HB 961, which is the bill Terry had mentioned just recently. So expanding EOL and preschool open doors to 3-year-olds. It was transmitted to the governor on the 3rd. HB 960, which relates to the School Facilities Authority and the $200 million appropriated for the purpose of expanding pre-K, passed the final reading on the 4th. SB 941, which we are also tracking as it relates to teacher housing, passed final reading on the 4th as well. SB 239, which would establish an accreditation program under the Department of Human Services, also passed on the 4th. SB 1022, which I believe the board will be discussing later, as it relates to ELB's composition, was also transmitted to the governor on the 3rd. And then HB 300, the state budget, passed final reading on the 4th as well. And the budget worksheets have not yet been posted, but I do believe that there are funds for the EOEA public pre-K program expansion, and also includes the early childhood educator stipend program funding as well. So right now, the governor and departments will be working to review bills that have passed the final reading and transmitted to the gov. If he does intend to veto a bill, he must notify the legislature by June 26 and then deliver the veto by July 11th. If he signs a bill, it becomes law. If he neither signs nor vetoes a bill by July 11th, then it becomes law. So right now, departments are working with the gov and his team to provide comments and recommendations regarding implementation and implications of bills that have passed this legislative session. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Jordana?
Yeah, I have one. This is Steve. So, for can you clarify for 960, the school facilities authority? Is that essentially a vehicle for budget? Like, what does that do?
It just transfers the funds that were appropriated to them to their special fund. So it allows for a little bit more flexibility for the SFA.
And then the one right below it related to teacher housing. What does that do?
So it gives the SFA authority to build teacher housing.
But that's teacher housing broadly defined, right?
Broadly defined to teachers and staff. So it would be exclusive to basically teachers, but I think it's broadly defined in the sense of lots of
Like
folks.
it could be preschool teachers, it could be K-12 teachers. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
And Carrie has a question in the chat that says, with $170 million appropriation, is that correct for the housing? Jordana, do you recall that? I don't remember an amount.
Yeah, I don't remember the amount.
Carrie, you're probably right. I just don't recall either. Any other questions for Jordana about any of the bills or the procedure going forward? We'll talk more about 1022 as we go through the agenda. All right, if there are no others, we can move on.
Thank you. An update from our pre-K team is that we've received 278 applications as of April 30th so far. And we're pretty certain that that number will increase shortly. And then Alohi, would you like to speak on the next part, please?
Yeah, hi everybody, good afternoon. For our early childhood state plan, strategic plan, we do have our state plan dashboard that's been being reviewed by the SI subcommittee. So I just wanted to share that we're still in revision of the state plan dashboard, and to ensure that it's suitable for board use. We're really looking at how can the board, it be most useful for the board, and even moving forward with the new news, how can we use it for the best transition of the board? And then for PDGB 5, we did have another TA Center webinar, and this one was really focused on quality workforce and increasing compensation broadly as in wages and benefits, and got to have a peer-to-peer time with other states and to talk about what they were able to do or some of their challenges. Things are very similar here in Hawaii and across nationally. So that was interesting. And there's another one. We'll be having TA calls every month, and they'll always kind of focus on a different topic. And then I've been reiterating this. We are going to be still collecting feedback on the progress of strategic implementation plans on all 6 or 7 areas. So there is a Google form to provide that feedback. And there was a request from the board last month to put that form into a PDF form to see all the questions in one place. So you can find the PDF to be able to be downloaded on the earlychildhoodhawaii.com on the side tab. If anybody wants an email to them, I'm happy, please contact me and I'm happy to share that with you all. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Lovey, and thanks for making that adjustment. Head Start, Chris.
Hello, everyone. Just wanted to report that we are slowly making our way towards the actual completion and signatures regarding our 7 state level MOUs with state partners in Department of Health, DOE, and Department of Human Services. Slow process, but we're making progress ever so slowly. And these MOUs are really meant to strengthen and institutionalize the partnerships that we have with our state partners to ensure that our kiddos and families are accessing the services that they need. Happy to report that Head Start is now being included in Ready Keiki stakeholder meetings as a result of the meeting that we had with the Lieutenant Governor earlier in April. So glad that Ben, as our association president, is able to attend those meetings now and provide feedback or be included in the conversations. Our Head Start programs for preschoolers are winding down their school year. Most of them will be done by the 3rd or 4th week in May, whereas our early Head Start programs will continue through most of the summer until at least mid-July. So programs have been busy with year-end school operations, but also the directors have been really busy with their annual refunding applications for their grants, as well as additional federal grant proposals for quality improvement and cost of living allowances. So very busy with a lot of these reports, as well as the ARPA grant summary reports for DHS, all while trying to navigate the continued staffing shortages and trying to reach funded enrollment. So now that the school year is almost over, several of our programs were not able to meet their full funded enrollment counts, but are close. And so constantly trying to strategize ways to recruit and enroll more families. So reaching out to you folks as partners, as Ben has mentioned in the past, you know, that we are continually looking to get more kiddos into our programs. And basically I continue to meet with folks. And that's basically it. Thank you so much for the time.
Any questions for Chris? All right, you go. I think you're doing.
Thank you, Chris. So I just wanted to revisit this slide because on May 2nd, I actually made 1 year of being here, and I just wanted to kind of recap what we tried to accomplish over the last year. So many of you might remember this of how I was going through my first 90 days, and it's actually an iterative process. So just because you go through 90 doesn't mean that you don't go back and revisit those spaces over and over again as we continue to move our work forward. And I had asked the question, like, who am I? Because you didn't know who I was and I didn't know who you were. And then also trying to really think about who are we as a group? Who are we as the people who are responsible for the coordination of early care and education in Hawaii? And so at that time, I spoke about a vision of impact on a personal level for our office and for our system. And as I revisited this, I can see that all of these pieces have been touched on over and over again throughout the whole year. And I showed this, and I remember I could not pull up the video, and I'm not selling iPads, but the link is also in the bottom of the slide deck if you ever wanted to watch it and you didn't get a chance to watch this most amazing video. But at the end of this, the question really is, what will what will our verse be? And I showed this picture because I happened to be driving into work one day, and there was a truck on the side that said, "Make it happen." And so it just kind of spoke to me, you know, as I was entering this new space and stepping into the new role. So thank you for all of your assistance and support and encouragement and questions and wonderings and the time that you've taken to meet with me over these past years, and we shall see where the future heads. I wanted to touch on family support. I was recently invited actually by Kim Geek from P20, and actually Lane came out with me to go and visit Kapa'alana out at Barbers Point. And it's a space that's nestled between two different buildings right at the end of the parking lot. And it's a really special place because it services families who are experiencing homelessness, and it's nationally accredited, and it helps to grow families together, the adults and the children. And it's a really neat space because it's actually built in its yurts. And up until very recently, these yurts were not, there was no electricity heading out that way. And I learned that the people who work in the space actually went and adjusted all these panels to insulate it, and they were able to get a line of electricity. So now it's finally air conditioned. As you can imagine, it must have been very hot, but they've been operating out there for quite some time, and you can see how inviting this space is for the children and the families. Additionally, outside, they have a large outdoor meeting area where when we first came, all the families were seated outside there, and they were doing all these activities with the children. And then there's a bike path and a garden area. And it was so encouraging to see the interactions of the adults with the children, how present they were, how they spoke with them, how the children were excited to be there. And it was very, very uplifting. We also visited another site out in Waianae, and then the center out in Maili. But I wanted to land on this page because I learned something about this space. So has anybody ever been to Kapa'alana and knows what this is?
Well, I don't know what this is,
Yes.
but I went there because when they are building that, they needed a health consultant. They didn't have one yet. So because we are doing a little project from the DHS, I went out there, checked outside, and then see what it is. The bathroom wasn't in the space, which was one of the things needed, but it was, you know, the physical constraint was there. But our local NAEYC office was China accredited this program because, you know, these people are serving the most vulnerable children, so they wanted to do something about it. So I think they came up with these plans. Probably this is part of it, I think.
Yeah, so this is part of the water piece. So this space operates with no water line to it. And they've been operating like this for years. And if there was anything, if I could have ever waved my wand, I want to get them water.
You know, this is not just here, the nationwide, I think this is one of the ways that
Yes,
to
you
get
can.
things done.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But it was like so amazing, and how creative they are with their space, how creative they are with their resources, and how they still continue to thrive with what they have. And it was just really amazing.
Yeah, and I totally agree, I'm so sorry, but I totally agree with you that their passion and how excited about the program that they're providing. I still remember very clearly, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm glad to hear that it's still like that.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Then moving on to health, mental health and nutrition, I reported the last time that I was going to have an opportunity to participate in a conversation on the child and adult care food program. And you can see a little bit more about what this is. Acronyms abound, but CACFP. And at this last session, we were introduced to a dashboard. And the dashboard highlights according to this dashboard, and again, I don't know what feeds into it. So, you know, in terms of the number of providers and that capacity number, I'm not quite sure how that was generated. But the bigger picture that I wanted to just share is when you look at this, it shows just an overall picture of Hawaii. And then you go to this picture, and these are the number of providers and capacity that are participating in the National School Lunch Program. And then you look here and you see how many people are participating in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And then the next one is about the number of people that do not participate in either of it. And this to me was the most curious slide, And I don't have the answers, and I'm not sure the reason why, but it makes me wonder some things. And so I just wanted to share this website and this data with us, because maybe it might provoke a conversation about something we might be able to discuss further. But I thought it was very interesting. Okay, then for the early learning update, so our EOL pre-K team is very busy doing a speedy induction, advanced induction sessions for our 11 schools that are going to be brought on in August. Typically, the cycle for EOL has been year one, they slowly do this induction throughout the first year, and then year two is when we bring on children. But our children are coming in August, and we also need to do applications. And so they had to really bump up the schedule and accommodate whatever is going on at the schools in their last month at the end of the year. So we've got people flying out, we've got people flying in, and they're doing a really great job. I was able to attend their session, part of it, on May 9th at the airport conference room. And so the people who are coming on board, you know, it's a lift and it's something new. And so of course there's lots of questions, but our pre-K team is doing a really good job in guiding them through the induction process. On the right side, you'll see some renovations pieces. So Lincoln, there's already work that started on their campus. Wahiawa will start on Monday, the 15th. And the rest of the schools, you can see the varying days, but they will start to land and touch their campuses as soon as the students exit campus and leave for the school year. Our pre-K team wanted to share that the ECE Summer Institute is available now to register. In the middle of the right side, it says registration. If you can't see or find it through all the text, but you can contact Jamie Lum, and there's a phone number and an email there, and you can learn more about what is the Institute, who's this guest speaker, what is the schedule, and some of the assignments, and it can be for credit or also for non-credit. I also wanted to give some systems update. So one thing that's very exciting is that I applied to be a part of the National P3 conference. Well, we went to the National P3 conference back in September, and then they offered an opportunity to have a leadership certificate program. And so I applied and I was accepted. But also Kaz Rochelle Mahoy, who's also on the call too, was accepted too. So we're going to be learning buddies along with some other people that she knows within the DOE. And you can see on the very bottom, it's going to be an 11-month program. And all of those pieces on the bottom are what we're going to be learning about as we move through this next year in this leadership certificate program. Also, really happy to announce that our Department of Human Services got a impact project approved, and EOL is going to be helping and supporting them through this. And the purpose of this impact project is to help states develop and expand their capacity for planning, investing, and implementing the early childhood systems, policies, and practices. And each impact project has a focus area, and it's typically around either carrying out CCDF, things related to CCDF and how to organize better. So they have this 5 dimensions of capacity building. And so that capacity building is actually the focus of the impact project. So whether we're looking at culture, climate, engagement, partnerships, financial resources, infrastructure, knowledge, and skills, these are the things that are going to be a part of the impact project. So I'm really happy that they applied for it and that we can partner on that project. Additionally, I just returned from the ESEPS conference. So ESEPS is the Early Care Education Pathways to Success National Conference, and it's focusing on early childhood education apprenticeships. And before I went, I did not know the difference between an internship and an apprenticeship. But we had a really great team there. You can see people here. This is not everybody. There's a few people missing. But we had people from Head Start on Kauai. We had Hilo Community College, Kauai Community College, Terry from UH. We had county coordinators, Ted and Angela, and we had 3 individuals from Kikyo-Ka'aina. And so it was really neat. The conference was kind of long, it was 4 days. And so we got to sit and be around each other and have conversations around apprenticeships and also around other things. And one of the things to know is that this work has been said is that it could be things that were started and never finished, or things that possibly have never been started before. And so there are 5 big pieces about apprenticeships, which is it's a paid job. There's work-based learning, there's classroom learning, there's mentorship, and a national credential that comes of it. And you must have those 5 pieces in order to try to register it to become an official apprenticeship program. And there's also lots of other things too, but it's going to be an exciting pathway because this is one of the visuals that were there, and it said that there's really no traditional route to an early education career. Some people come right from high school, some people come from community college, some people can come out the route from the university system. And there were lots of different sessions to attend, but one of them that was really neat that I went to was basically everything you ever wanted to know about registered apprenticeships, but you didn't want to ask. And so it was really helpful that on day 1, they did this like a apprenticeship 101 for people who know absolutely nothing about apprenticeships. And that was very helpful and set the stage and the context for everything that was going to come after. Because it is very big work, but I know that we can do it. And that's the end of my update. So if anybody has any questions,
I think we'd all agree you've been fairly busy. Yeah. And congratulations for making it through your first year, especially learning to navigate the legislative session, which I know was much like the fire hose of information coming at you, and with a lot of support from Jordana and Colleen. It's pretty amazing how much has been accomplished. So congratulations on that front as well. I think we all are delighted to know that you've made it to year 1 and you've begun year 2. That's exciting. Any comments or questions before you go? If not, then we will thank you, Yuko, and the staff for sharing, and we will move to the subcommittee reports. And actually, your last piece is a good segue for the first subcommittee report from the Workforce Equity Subcommittee. And Justina is going to introduce the conversation. Justina.
That's great, thank you. And hopefully you guys can hear me okay online since we're in the room, but actually what Yuko was sharing about the ESEPs, the Early Care Education Pathways to Success Conference, really does set up nicely this conversation, because what we wanted to do is there's been some evolving work on apprenticeship and early care and education in Hawaii with the work of Kikyo-Ka'aina. And so actually what we had planned to do and what we'll do for this update from the committee is we wanted to have Mel Vega from Kikyo-Ka'aina share a little bit about some of those updates, including one pathway that has always seemed a bit elusive, which is really how do we start attracting our workforce more from the high school level. So with that, Mel, I want to just turn it over to you to have the floor.
Aloha, everyone. So just to briefly update what has happened since the last time we spoke, we do officially have a workforce development coordinator that is overseeing the apprenticeship or managing the apprenticeship program, I should say. It's still a little under my oversight, but we have a manager and a coordinator. So she will always be available to answer any questions from the community if there are any. We also attended the ESEPS conference that Yuko spoke about. So 3 of our staff were there, along with the Hawaii group, and participating in those conversations. We, since the last time, participated in 2 high school, what was called career fairs, hiring and career fairs. We received 92 inquiries from high school or seniors who would be graduating this year. Of those 92 inquiries, we actually 50 of them received informational emails from us about the apprenticeship program. And of those 50, 5 responded to those emails. And since then, we have actually interviewed 2 applicants that will be starting with us this next month. We'll be starting with us next month in the apprenticeship program in their first 90 days of just working in a preschool or infant toddler site. And then be moving forward with registering with Honolulu Community College and all the other things that are involved with the apprenticeship program. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the large number evolves into eventually a much smaller number of actual interest and finally actually pursuing the program. We also are now, as a result of the conference, going to be developing what we're calling an apprenticeship retention support piece to the apprenticeship program, which will include 3 different types of supervision. One is the reflective supervision, which now they found is really, really important to help people successfully move through the school program. We've found that actually to be very true. Administrative supervision, just to get all the administrative work done as far as the organization they're employed with, as well as registering for the classes and all of those details that can be overwhelming for someone. And then what we're calling program implementation supervision, which is the actual teachers and directors in the classroom that will be supporting that person that's in the classroom, learning how to become a early childhood professional. As a result of that, we have found a couple of concerns coming out of this group that starting. One is making sure we've had one girl that applied that was interviewing or talking to us on her phone and had no access to computers at her house, or the technology wasn't there for her. So we just need to be aware of making sure we're providing it on site. And then also we had another applicant that she was graduating from high school, but she had a little one, almost 1-year-old infant. And so childcare became a question. And so Keiki is currently looking at how we would address that. Our last review of our application with the Department of Labor and the National Apprenticeship Program is going to be on Monday. So after that, we'll know whether there's any more work we need to do in the application or it's been approved. So that's the update.
Anyone have questions for Melody? Okay, Christina, did you want to have any observations you wanted to add?
Well, I think what you're sharing, Mel, about just the pathway program and really demonstrating that you guys are trying a bunch of things with how you get high school students in, that's still this really big wide into the funnel for recruitment, and then it just sort of narrows. And we saw that a little bit also in the RAND study report that had apprenticeship as one of the one of the recommendations to kind of look at as a model. But you could also see that it wasn't big numbers, right, that could be accommodated in an apprenticeship program. So I think what you're showing, I mean, you're just showing us really some new pathways, but also ones in order to go deep and really develop this field, like they're not gonna be the, real scale, really at a large scale. So they're important and also important for us to think about. So we think about multiple ways that those pathways come into being. So thanks for sharing it, Mel, and all the work you guys are doing.
Mel, do you have any ideas about, given the large numbers who expressed interest, and that may have been just in the moment kinds of things, but the number who followed through in the end being so small, is it your sense that this is appealing to a certain population, or that there are other features that need to be added to bring people in? Or is it premature to even have those thoughts?
Well, the one thought that came to our minds was we aren't going to expect to have these. I know they do these fairs and recruitment events right before graduation because they want them to think about it. But it's really not a good idea to put another idea in a high school senior's mind when they're thinking about their graduating in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So we're actually going to send those informational emails out again after graduation is over and all the events and activities, because I feel like a larger number may be interested, but I do agree with Justina. I just have to say that that the apprenticeship program is not necessarily designed for the employer to have large numbers. It was designed as a sponsor to support other programs to grow their workforce within their organization, within their program. So that's how the apprenticeship program grows. But as far as a group of young people that are easily distracted, it's best to catch them at the right time. So the 5, they were thinking about it, but we're going to do it again and see what more comes out of the second time after graduation has died down and they're not as distracted. So we'll see what happens the second time.
The other question I would have is there a capacity cap on the number of apprentices you could take in your program? I assume there would.
For Keikiokaina, the right now we are not putting a cap on the number. We know what the attrition rate is, and as for any program or organization that's expanding, you want to make sure you're thinking ahead on the staffing you'll need eventually in a year or so. So what we know is for our own purposes, we need to think ahead. And that's how I would encourage anyone to think when you're doing a program like this, is you're not just meeting the needs right then. So if we don't have a position right then, they'll still be part of the apprenticeship program. They'll still be working in the classrooms. They'll still be going through the mentorship and the on-the-job training and the coursework to prepare for when a position does open up. So that's why, we'll probably, this is the way I'm looking at it, is you'll maybe enroll 10 people a year, but as they drop out at the end, we would have at least 10 to 12 people that actually complete the program.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Mel?
Bob, I have a question for Mel.
Sure.
Mel, as the high school students are looking at different career pathways and being told what are good jobs, I'm wondering, and especially with the report that came out today around a family of 4 needing $104,000 a year, what are you finding to be some of the language, or what's enticing for high school students to say, yes, I want to go into this field? Are you finding any patterns yet?
Not so much patterns, but we have noticed that those that were particularly serious were actually serious about going to college. They did want to go to college. And that's why they responded to when we responded to their inquiry. So that has to be there at first. But what we also did notice, and we are making adjustments to it, is making sure that starting wage is comparable. And because this generation, they're looking at how much they're going to get paid. And it's not, that's not the first thing I looked at when I started this 45 years ago. So this is a different group of people coming in. So we did look at some adjustments, and we also share with them the value of that's attached to that wage. So they get a kind of a flyer paper that says you're getting paid this much, but we're also putting in this much to pay for your school, and that's attached to your wage, and you see that you're actually getting a lot more than just that wage. And for those that really understand that, really want to go to school, that means something.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting to think that you're also starting this when the marketplace, the labor marketplace, is an interesting place too, and very competitive at the moment. So that probably has an impact on the number who would apply, I would assume. Okay, any other comments or questions for now? Well, I don't see any, so thank you, Mel and Justina, for giving us an update. The Workforce Committee continues on its way, making inroads in a variety of places, so it's really exciting to see what's happening. All right, we'll move to the next subcommittee update, and that's the Governance Standing Subcommittee, and Matt Chin will share with us. Matt?
Good afternoon, everybody. We have two topics to discuss today. First is the director's evaluation, and then the second is Senate Bill 1022. So for the director evaluation, similar to last year, we will be using a Google Forms survey for all voting members and ex officios to provide input to Bob related to UCO's performance over the past year. So that the time frame is May of last year through April of this year. Bob will be sending out an email with a link to the survey on May 18th. Everyone will have until close of business on the 25th to complete the input form. Now, if you remember, there are three. Back in December, the board voted on three items that will be discussed or that will be used for the evaluation of UCO this year. As you're completing the evaluation form, a couple things to keep in mind. Board member, your observations of and interactions with UCO are what you should be using as part of your evaluation. Also, the monthly EOEL updates for the board with specific reference to the link included in the Google Docs presentation. And then Finally, you will also be provided, we have asked Yuko to provide a director's reflection and self-evaluation. So that will be shared, and that's related to those leadership standards and indicators that were approved by the board. Yuko will also have a portfolio of evidence to provide some objective measures of some of the things that she's done over the past year to meet those leadership standards and indicators. Let's see. The survey is confidential, so you should not be discussing your responses with other board members. Please do not share the link outside of the board. And I believe that's it. Let's see. Bob did talk with the Deputy Attorney General's office regarding sunshine law and whether or not the summary of the evaluation would be in executive session or not. And Bob, I believe it cannot be discussed in executive session, so it will be provided in the regular board meeting in June, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, I think that's it for the evaluation. Bob, did I miss anything or do you have anything? Okay.
I think you got it all.
All right. Does anybody have any questions or need more information? I'm happy to try to answer your question. Okay. Awesome. So be on the lookout for the email from Bob. If you do not, you might want to mark on your, if you do not receive one from Bob, check your junk mail, but you shouldn't, right? You should have Bob as one of your favorites and accept any email from Bob.
They could trash me if they chose.
But if you don't get it, just double check, check your email. And if you don't get it, email Bob so we can make sure we send you the link. And then again, please, this is a board priority. So we really need to complete this in a week. So Bob can discuss, I'll put all of our input together, have a discussion with Yuko, and then present to the board on June 15th.
I think it's the 8th.
Yes, June 8th, sorry, looking at the wrong. So June 8th, Thursday, June 8th.
Matt, I want to emphasize something if I may.
Sure.
Non-voting members should take part in this survey. This is a full board input survey, not restricted to voting members. That was something else that we did check out. So please make the effort to also participate.
Thank you. Okay, last chance for any questions on director evaluation. Okay. Next up, SB 1022. Here's a summary of the conference committee report. The purpose of the measure is to amend the composition and qualifications of the Early Learning Board to establish general qualifications for the members of the Early Learning Board appointed by the governor and require the Early Learning Board to establish an Early Learning Stakeholder Advisory Council. That's based on the HD1 version of the bill, which was the last one before it went to conference. The conference committee met and they amended the measure by clarifying the minimum and ideal qualifications of nominees for the Early Learning Board, which was basically to remove any reference that we added and to revert it back to the original form of the original SB 1022. It deleted language that would have added a member who is a representative of the Hawaiian medium early learning providers and a member who is a pediatrician with child development focus. So that language was removed. They added three members from the city and county of Honolulu rather than one. They deleted language that would have created the Early Learning Stakeholder Advisory Council and made it effective upon its approval. Plus some technical non-substantive amendments for the purpose of clarity and consistency. So again, basically, I think as Bob had stated previously, any of the amendments that we had through HD1 were removed and the bill was reverted back to its original form that was submitted by Senator Dela Cruz. So, questions? I'm sure someone has questions. Anyone?
This is Megan. Just a general question. I guess my main question is the act of reverting back to the original language, is that common, or do we understand the reasons behind that?
That is a very good question. Bob, do you have any insight that?
I have no insights, only guesses. And there is nothing, because of the way the last session, when this bill was heard 3 days in a row, and was finally released in that 4:30 to 6 o'clock slot on Friday afternoon, by when all bills had to be approved or modified. And during that time, any of you who have followed the news or even watched the hearing, all bills were being discussed pretty much at the same time in room 309, as far as I could tell. And I did not stay for that last hearing at 4:30. And there is no explanation for what the rationale was behind it. I had anticipated from some conversations I'd had that the HD1 version, which we had preferred and shared in the conference memo, might be moved forward. But it evidently was not in the final analysis. But as far as a rationale, nothing, Megan, there's nothing in the conference report, for example, that indicates what the rationale was. So, and I hesitate to make my guesses.
Thank you.
Yes, we have a question from Carrie, and it says, is our last meeting together as this group in June? Well, that's a good question. The bill is not effective until it's approved, signed by the governor. I don't know, Jordana, do you know what the date is if the governor doesn't sign it? What when it becomes law automatically?
Yeah, I believe it's July 11th.
Okay. So
if there were no signing, it becomes law on July 11th.
So okay, so that's two months from now, right? May, June, July, 2 months from today.
Carrie, I'm assuming we will have a June meeting, but I don't know about a July meeting.
Yeah, July, if we stick with Thursdays, will be after that date.
Would it, I've forgotten what, yeah, I didn't
Yes,
check.
July 13th.
Okay.
July
And-
13th.
And however, there are some other key questions that have not been answered to know what's going to happen. Matt, can I just jump in and share?
Yes, absolutely.
What I've been trying to find out. There are two pieces to this that I want us to talk about before we close down today. One is how, if at all, do we respond to the approval of SB 1022 in its original form, given our HD1 preference. And the second is, what does the future look like for the board? And how should we be thinking about it? So I'll go to the second one first of all for some comment, because it's more pertinent to your questions, I think, Carrie, that you're asking that probably others have. I have reached out to boards and commissions, which has had a change in leadership. In fact, the day after the bill the response of the conference committee was made public, I sent an email asking these questions to see if we could get some guidance. First of all, given there is no start date for the new board, do all current board members vacate their seats upon approval of the bill? If so, how does that relate to the application appointment of new members and the EOEL's governance once the current board is disbanded? The second question was, if they qualify, can current board members apply for the voting seats if they so desire? I've had some information about that second question from another source who used to be with boards and commissions, and that response was yes, they will be able to apply. Third question is, what are the protocols or procedures to follow to transition from one board to another? In other words, what is required and expected of the departing board? And fourth, are there specific materials, records, etc., that should be passed along to the new board? I have emailed a couple of times. I have also called and left a message because I was the new coordinator was not available. And I just haven't had any direct contact. So I don't know the answers to those questions. So we're sitting in a bit of a limbo at the moment with regard to what happened, particularly because we don't know if a new board will be immediately appointed. Will there be an interim board? Because obviously, unless there is a special session, new board members can't be given approval by the Senate until the legislative session occurs. The governor could appoint at any time. That doesn't seem to be problematic. But whether or not a full board can be an interim board would be another question. We know that some of our board members over the years have sat in interim position and have been allowed to participate and then were approved by the Senate when legislative sessions occurred. Well, that's the closest precedent that I know of. The governor, the other thing that's sitting out there in limbo is, when is the governor going to sign or not sign the bill? The governor has the bill, he could sign at any point now. We know by when he must indicate the veto, that's the June 26th date. We also know by when a bill becomes law, if there is no veto, or if there is no signing by the governor officially. But those dates don't guide us directly either. So I'm sorry to say I can't bring more information so that we can really plan accordingly what we should do. Given that situation, my inclination and what I would like this board to do is to continue to function as it has been functioning, to continue to operate in its governance role, for the board committees to begin to, continue to do their work. There is work to be done. And I was going to ask Matt if the governance committee at its May meeting might take up the issue of whatever we learn in the meantime and how we help to move the transition forward. It's not clear what happens to the board committee structure when the new board takes over, whether or not it creates its own new board structure, or does it follow the board structure that currently exists? Those things are not clear either. So I am assuming we would want to pass on. Board committees have worked really hard, and that's where the work of a board has happened. If we're going to be realistic about it, that information needs to be shared with the next board and to be picked up on. certainly the work, particularly of the Strategic Implementation Committee that's been looking at the state plan and where things happen, and the progress being made there will be really important for the board to know. It's also, we need some answers because the office needs to know how it continues to function. In the absence of a board, should the board just end and there's no plan going forward. So that's my primary goal at the moment, is to find out what is the procedure we need to follow, to get some guidance from boards and commissions along that way, or from someone, I don't know who else. We have contacted the AG's office with a specific question about the EOEL's function, should there be no board, but that is not the same issue that we're trying to resolve. So there are many, many questions sitting out there that I will continue to dog the people who may have the answers for us, and will share with you as soon as that information is received. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it. People have other suggestions or questions about that approach, I'm happy to entertain them.
Well, people are thinking about what questions they want to ask Bob. Just some inside information that I learned in my position here at the Department of Health related to the legislative session and the governor. I have heard that the governor is not planning on vetoing bills. So, but it's up to the governor, but that was information that was shared with me. Because we had asked specifically about one bill and whether or not we would recommend it, a veto for it. So we were told that probably is not an option, and don't rely on a governor's veto. So that's just additional information. And again, the governor can make the decision whether or not that happens or not. So who has questions? Anyone?
Melody Vega indicated in the chat that she has a question.
Yes, go ahead, Melody.
So for those of us, because I know my term is up. I believe it's up in June.
Yes.
Then we were not even going to worry about anything that happens after that, because our term is up.
Well, I'm gonna worry about what happens after that. I think, I mean, Mel, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the conference memo, but when we submitted it, we submitted a transition plan recommendation, which was that this current board be allowed to continue until the end of November, so that the EOEL could carry on its functioning, and so that the governor would have more than enough time for people to apply, for him to select based upon the qualifications that have been identified to satisfy the skill set that was being desired for the new board. But that was not part of the approval. But until we really know what is the transition process plan, I can't say for certain that we won't have more time to function. Somebody may say the current board continues until the governor has had a chance to appoint the rest of the board. I just don't know. And I'm sorry, I can't be more specific about it, but I guess I'm wondering who does know, or if there is a plan. I don't know if this has been encountered in the past in this way. When we moved from an advisory board to a governing board, it was not the same kind of total change of the board. It was really just the elimination of 2 seats on the board. The rest of the board continued, so it wasn't the same kind of issue. that we're encountering now with the entire composition of the board changes. So
Bob,
it's a limbo.
sorry, sorry. to interrupt.
Steve?
I'm just wondering, I mean, as you sort of alluded to, hasn't this happened before? Like, there has to have been something that has occurred. Not, I mean, obviously not with early learning, but
If it's happened, I'm not aware of it. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like the legislature is always messing with composition of boards, but maybe not so as dramatically as this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And it may be that, yeah, it may not be the complete change of a board. in
Yeah,
other cases. It may just be adjusting seats and numbers.
yeah.
Yeah, but I really don't know.
The Board of Regents has been adjusted, but again, it was an adjustment. Numbers and all that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that it's really difficult to tell.
So no, go ahead.
Sorry, Matt.
Go ahead.
I don't have a way to, well, I guess I just do this the old fashioned way, right? So there's the boards and commissions office, right? And I was wondering, do they have any authority to potentially help with the transition, like sort of plan as proposed by, or in that memo last time? Or is it under, I guess one of my big questions sounds like none of us really knows, like whose sort of jurisdiction is it in? Is it, whose jurisdiction is it in to determine how the transition will actually take place? Because I'm assuming the board and commissions, they sort of need approval. There's some of it that's in legislation, but that's not all of it.
Right. Yeah, that my assumption was boards and commissions might have a process for such things, but I don't know. You know, that's what I've been trying to figure out. The legislation obviously is the determiner of when the board stops and starts, just because of the way it was written. But whether or not it relieves itself of anything related to the process isn't clear. And, you know, I will keep trying to find out. And I guess I know that the Boards and Commission office is, I think, made up of one person, so it may be rather difficult to be able to respond to all the demands on that person's time. But we will keep pursuing it. I think there is another issue though here too, and despite Matt's claim about the governor not vetoing, I think we need to make a decision about, are we going to respond to this, or are we going to just allow it to happen, no matter what, and take our chances on it. There is, departments do receive the opportunity to offer comments and recommendations on bills as they're passed. And there are a variety of categories, ranging from approval to vetoing to no comment being made whatsoever. And that is in a context of the veto would not be simply things like, this is too hard to do, or we don't have staff particularly to do it. There would have to be some foundational reasons for really vetoing or recommending that the governor consider vetoing. And I think we need to have some discussion aside from what we don't know right now about, do we respond? Because if we do, that needs to be done within the next couple of weeks at the most. And governor could approve even in the meantime, if he so chose, the bill as it currently has been approved by the conference committee. But we do have an option of responding to the governor and making a recommendation to him with attached comments about the rationale for that recommendation. So I'd like to put that out there for conversation, and in fact would love to have a motion from someone to first of all respond to the current situation, and then secondly what that response might be. But you all have to be so inclined. Any thoughts?
Bob, I just want to clarify. So you're asking us to consider sending a response to the governor to consider vetoing this.
Well, we can do it in two ways. We can do one that's just a response of some sort, and then we have those choices. Or we can say, we recommend a response. A motion could be made to recommend, we respond to the governor recommending a veto. We would just have to be clear on the rationale for that veto recommendation if we're going to do it.
But another potential option.
Kevin, can you give me share screen? Can you give Matt share screen? Thanks.
I was just gonna say another potential option, though, isn't necessarily recommending veto, but recommending like action steps to make this a more viable transition, right? Which is basically, you can do, I mean, you could recommend the transition paragraph that's in here, but that doesn't necessarily need to be in the statute. Yeah. It's just a path forward.
Yeah, you could recommend almost anything. I think the issue is, were there things about the HD1 version, which were our recommendations, our amendments that we had suggested to the original bill? Are there things in there we want to have preserved? And therefore, a recommendation would be this particular version does not meet the needs in some way. And therefore we recommend a veto. It doesn't mean we couldn't come back in next session. And if we were vetoed, whether that is correct or not, and recommend some revision, to be like our HD1. Both are possibilities. I guess that's what the opinion. And they could be done separately or they could be done collectively.
May, go ahead.
Thank you. I was just thinking, I'm thinking that for now, I think it's more important for the board for us to think of or to put together all the things or transition things or all the things that is important that we've been working so hard with. And even all the subcommittees, gather all the things that we've been working with, and important to our board, important to our mission, and when the transition does happen, when it happens, we don't know when, but everything is there and it creates a smooth transition to the next board. Not necessarily to veto or to submit something to the governor, but I think it's important for us to start thinking, what is important to our group and how should we capture what is important to us and smoothly transition it to or warm hand it over to the next group so that the good works that we have done and could continue on with the next group.
Thank you, May.
So folks, sorry, I was going for educational purposes, I was going to share what the department comments and recommendation form is that goes to the governor from the department. However, at the very top, I didn't know this until I actually opened up the form. It says this form, including any attachments, is for the sole use of the recipient and may contain confidential or privileged information. Any review, use, disclosure, or distribution by unintended recipients is prohibited. So I'm sorry, I cannot share what's in there other than what we know by general general principle, what's in those recommendations. So this is what basically Bob said. You can provide comments, what the impact is, and no comment, or you can request a veto. So
This is Ben. I just wanted to like, I think there's two things. Is definitely we want to get some clarity on the transition, which is something I think we can speak to, and that's pretty safe and whatnot. But it's also in response to what we our suggestion or our recommendation didn't seem to be addressed, or even, I guess, in the conference committee minutes, it's not talked about. So maybe, I don't know if it's asking like, was there was there an issue with what we provided as a recommendation? And we're, I think it's fair to say we're disappointed that our recommendation didn't seem to be considered. And at the same breath, what's the transition? Like, we also included a transition, recommendations for transition, and maybe that's what we're asking for too. So I'm just kind of putting it out because I think those are the two things that we're considering. So that's just my take. Thanks.
well, the only public information that we have is if you watch all of the conference committee playbacks, that's the public information of their discussions, but that has nothing to do with any other discussions that are happening not in conference. Right? That's the political machine. Jordana, do you have any governmental policy or procedural things to add?
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing I would really point out is that the purpose of the comment and recs form is not to really recommend a transition process, but more so to provide feedback to the governor on whether you oppose or support a bill, right? So it's supposed to help the governor make his decision on whether he wants to sign, enact, or veto a bill. I think the questions that are to address the transition is separate from the comment and rec form. The question that I do think the board needs to ask itself is, does this bill pose a significant barrier to the ELB in effectuating its statutory obligations? And then depending on that answer, that's what you may want to consider putting onto the comment and rec form, right? So for example, if it is going to be a significant barrier for ELB to effectuate its statutory obligations, if this collective board feels very strongly that the new composition will not be helpful in effectuating its statutory obligations, then you may want to justify why you would recommend a veto. If it's not going to pose a significant barrier, then you may want to consider just supporting the bill. So again, the point of the comment and rec form is really to help the governor make a best informed decision for him to decide if he wants to veto the bill, enact the bill, or enact it without signing. The transition period is different from what you're going to recommend to the governor.
Thank you, Jordana. I appreciate that. We're very happy. We're very happy you're with the EOEL because you've been very helpful over this past session as we've been trying to navigate these new things, and even new to me. I'm not a long-term state legislative policy person. I just started here a few years ago, so Thank you.
Jordana, I do have a question about the transition. Could we do a separate thing that isn't part of the CNR? That is a recommendation that the governor might consider. We could send a letter, a memo kind of thing. That we
Yeah, I
could do
would think so. I mean, I would think, just based on my experience, I think Governor Green seems open to discussing things with governmental agencies. So I would think a memo, or even if you wanted to set up a meeting, would be fine. I do think boards and commission and the AGs, as you've been trying to reach out to, will help provide some insight on that. But I also think that, you know, in the subcommittees, I know folks have been discussing documenting things, relaying it to the new board. So that might be something that would be good to reach out to the gov on to see if there would be willingness to help out with that transition. But I do think ultimately that new board, once they take effect, will have to make those final decisions, right? But it might play a role in helping the governor to determine who he wants to select as interim board members. And then also might be helpful for the Senate when they have to confirm those folks.
Thank you.
Bob, I think what makes it difficult to answer your question is I'm not sure that anyone on the call feels confident in what's been decided.
I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
Sure. I said, I think what's making it hard for anybody to comment and
Mhm.
answer your question is I'm not sure that anybody on this call feels confident in what's been decided. I mean, you have 6 non-voting members, which is questionable also, and you haven't really decreased the number of membership, I think by 2 maybe. So it's just I mean, I think the bill isn't great. And so I think all of us are probably thinking of all of the changes we'd want to see. So for me, it's more of a question of get clarity on the transition, figure out what we need to do to make sure we transition well, or veto. And I think those are the 2 options from what I see.
Okay.
This is Steve. I agree that Carrie characterized it right. Those are the 2 things that have to be discussed. Actually, I think the transition thing should be regardless. Right. And I wouldn't necessarily think that that's through the governor. I think that's just kind of just making sure that I mean, we don't know what they might do, assuming it doesn't get, like, they may ignore the entire, you've all been succeeded in a job by somebody who ignored all of your wonderful transition binder work, but we got to try.
Yeah. Steve and Carrie, are you both saying that suggesting a veto is an option or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think, but I think what, I'm sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
No, I just want to be sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, it's always an option. I mean, I think it's the other option to, figuring out our transition strategy.
Okay.
Yeah, although I have a tweak to that, Carrie. I would say you kind of have to assume that even if you ask for a veto, you won't get it. So you kind of have to do the transition thing regardless.
Yeah,
Right.
That's true. That's true. Carrie, from your point of view, and anyone else who wants to jump in, if we did something around a veto, what would the rationale be?
Well, I think Jordana framed that well. Right, and the question was, could this new makeup of their proposed makeup impact the early learning board's ability to fulfill its statutory obligations? I think that's a difficult question. I mean, I think we'd all say, who knows? I don't know who's gonna, I don't know that question.
But I think we would have to make some observations about how we could.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question that actually it's probably for Jordana, but like, is the threshold for veto based on a legal argument? Like, if we just think this isn't going to be the best strategic move, is that is that insufficient rationale for a veto? Because like, I think there's some sentiment at least that this bill may not improve things, at least from some folks. But my basic question is, does that matter to the governor, or is all he's doing looking at whether or not the legislature made a reasonable move?
Yeah, so in our conversations with Gov and his team, the governor has made it very clear that he wants to work closely with the legislature and pass their priorities. So as such, what we were told was vetoing bills will need solid justification, not just simply we don't like it or we don't have capacity.
So one of the things to consider, basically, again, Carrie, thank you, and Jordana, thank you. As written, the EOEL has no governance after July 11th until a new board is selected and appointed, which may not be until April or May, April of next year. Is that enough of a, we cannot meet the statutory obligations of the board? And can EOEL function as it's supposed to by law without a sitting board, right? I mean, I don't. Right, because if it's black and white, as soon as this is approved, except for the ex officio people, everyone else poof. Right? Until folks apply and or are appointed by the governor, and then ultimately approved by the Senate. So thoughts?
My thought is maybe. We don't know, because it could be that interim appointments function.
You guys, what did the EOEL AG say?
What is what?
What does the EOEL AG say about this?
I cannot ask my AG.
You haven't
I
asked?
cannot ask my AG about work.
Yeah, I don't think that
I can't.
the question has been pursued yet, so we don't know. I have approached our Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, and her supervisors with that question, but they haven't been able to give a response yet. But it has more to do with how can an agency or department function if it lacks board approval for certain types of things that statutorily are required. So we don't have a response yet, Karen.
Yeah, because you could think about some of the functions coming up, or even the like oversight approval for the budget pieces.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yes.
That has to happen in, is it September? Yes.
Those are the kind of,
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing I identify in my question.
The other question, I guess, Bob, it's sort of like if you're in touch with them, the other question on my mind is, do the policies set by the early learning board, do they persist, or do they fully blank slate out if there's a new board?
Yeah. Someone told me they thought they continued, but I don't know. I can't remember who at the moment. But somebody in an authority position.
Yeah, I would think that the policies remain in place. I mean, like, and again, like my experience is Board of Ed, Board of Regents, they have to keep that stuff in place.
They don't start all over again.
No.
I think the organization of subcommittees might start over, but there are a lot of policy statements we have in terms of the way the board functions and that they would have to change if they were going to change them, which they could do, but I think they would be, I think Steve's right, they would continue on. Haven't really heard a motion from anyone. I hear the desire to figure out how to transition and how to do it well, to move forward. The veto question, the recommendation for a veto has been explored a bit, but I haven't heard anyone come forth with a motion of any sort. Does anyone feel strongly that a motion should be provided? That we need to take some action around?
All right, Bob, for me personally, I don't feel like I have enough information from the AGs or the, oops, sorry. Hold on. I don't feel like I have enough information from the AG or from anybody to even understand the transition to make a recommendation. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be granted time. I don't know if we're not going to be granted time. I think we still need to get some authoritative direction before we could make a motion personally.
Okay. Well, we will miss the time frame.
Conference I'm sorry, the department recommendation forms are due to the governor, I believe, by no later than June 1st. Is that right, Jordana? Somewhere, or maybe they each have their own, maybe they each have their own date based on when it was.
This
Yeah.
bill is second, right, Jordana?
Yeah, some do have shorter turnaround times, but I believe SB 1022 is June 2nd.
Well, I mean,
Thank you.
we could schedule another meeting. I mean, that's one thing we could do once you learn the information, or we can just write submit a general statement with some points about what we think are needed for a successful transition so that EOEL can continue to do business.
So Jordana, I have a question. So the recommendation form, is that coming from EOEL or from DOE, since EOEL is the attached agency?
So Gov's team sent it to me as the point of contact, but it is for ELB.
Oh, okay. Oh, ELB. Okay.
Are there clear benefits to us at least documenting, you know, kind of what we're thinking and the thoughts behind it? I mean, it sounds like we're pretty sure that we're not going to get a veto on this. But are there positives to putting down on paper why we think it should be different, aside from like that, you know, few percent chance of an actual veto? Or is it more harmful than good? I think that's maybe where I'm at, is what is the value of it at this point, and is it worth it?
I think part of the value would be the inclusion of a Hawaiian medium provider as a board member. Personally, we very clearly stated that in the beginning. That would be one. The second would be the issue around the fact that the board just ends upon approval, and the OEL might not be able to function and meet its statutory obligation as the bill is currently written. Those would be the two primary ones. I mean, I also have strong feelings about, I thought some of the qualifications we came up with were really good ones. we have lost the stakeholder voice now. And then we had a provision for a stakeholder voice on our original bill. That could be another one. I mean, I shouldn't say we've lost it because stakeholders could apply to become members. They just wouldn't be representing their groups, but the advisory council is gone as a chief. That could be a third one. Those might be the three items that come to my mind that we could suggest. No, Carrie, there's no chance to make any changes at this point. It's only, it either gets passed or the governor vetoes it, one or the other. There's another consideration here too. And I think we need to put this on the table. For those of you who are current voting board members and would like to apply, you have to be approved by the Senate. So if this current board recommends a veto of the bill, it could reflect on your application. I don't know. But I think that's a reality we have to throw out there.
I think those are the kinds of things that I was trying to get to. Obviously for Hawaiian Medium, mahalo again to all of you for supporting that inclusion. I think it speaks to a lot of the movement and progress we've made as a board to think of things in that way. And as that representative right now, I think it is, really pushing that boundary of what the ELB is set up to do, will, without having that established seat being required, will the ELB be able to carry out its statutory obligations in directing the EOEL? It's not a guarantee. It's not obvious to me right now. But like like we're pointing out now, we have to evaluate, do we have a better chance at being a part of this moving forward if we don't veto? And I understand that's a terrible place to be in, but I think it's what we really need to think about.
Jordana, this is Matt. I have another question. Let's say the bill moves forward and it's approved either by signing or not signing. And we find out information, whatever that information is, from boards and boards and commissions. There is another path, which is next session, getting someone to sponsor a bill to change the ELB again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either as a administrative package or working through a legislator to have a bill introduced. Is that a, I don't even know if that's a possibility.
I mean, bills could always be amended every year, but I would say that would need to be left up to the new board. That would be a decision that the new board would have to make.
Or the other thing is other individuals could approach their representatives or senators, their legislators, as citizens, concerned citizens, to work with legislator to craft a new bill, right? That's a possibility. Yes.
Could be. The route I would recommend is submit public testimony to ELB as your first step. I think, especially if it's the administrative package route, like the Gov, right, is I think going to give weight to the organizations that fall under sort of his purview. So I would recommend, if folks have concerns, they should first relay that to the board.
Jordan, I have another question. If the January 2nd is the date for response on the RNC, I mean, June 2nd, January 2nd would be nice. Is a response deadline? Does that mean the governor would not approve before then, or might the governor approve in the meantime, since he has the bill? Because if it's the latter, then trying to set up a special meeting might be worth it, and particularly if we can track down some information. That might be at least a bit of a workaround. Do you have any sense on that one?
I mean, I am assuming that the deadline did incorporate how the gov wanted to prioritize. I do know that there are some bills that have more expedited timelines for that purpose. So I would assume a decision won't be made until after that deadline and after the gov has a chance to review the comments and recommendations. That would be my guess.
If that's the case, I'm thinking, my sense is people have really are struggling with all the possibilities here. And it might be better for us to give ourselves a little bit of time and set up a special meeting around this particular issue, knowing what some of the key factors are and what kind of options we have before us. Let them settle in and think about them a bit. So that June 2nd is what, 3 weeks away or 2 weeks? Because I'm thinking the other thing is we have to have a 6-day notice, so that
It's 3 weeks
3 weeks
and 3 weeks and 1 day.
I'm going to recommend then that we hold out the possibility of a special meeting. I don't hear anybody ready to move forward today. And if somebody disagrees with that, please speak up. But that we consider a special meeting between now and within the next 2 weeks to really hash this out a bit more and try to have some more information that would allow us to make an informed decision, which I think is part of the uneasiness that people have. And get some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think if we could do a special meeting, I would be in favor of that.
Yeah, I agree with you too. About the thing, it's hard for me is, the way they are treating this is kind of rude. I don't know how else to say it. But, I understand, Jordana, you explained very clearly that we have to come up with a good reason that this is not a good change, right? But in the first place, they didn't explain, I don't think they explained enough to us. This change has to be made when it was kind of functioning fine. So from the medical stand, if it's not broken, we don't have to change it, right? Treatment or the management. So, why did you want to do it? I don't think we got a very clear explanation to that. But now we are placed in the position that we have to explain that this has to be done. So it's kind of like, isn't that kind of opposite? And then knowing that the budget is coming and everything else, they don't have to do this. So, do they actually think that this is an important board? You guys are trying to focus on the early learning, and then that's actually publicly spoken. But are you actually thinking that way seriously? That's how I feel. I'm kind of getting kind of upset that, okay, this kind of rude treatment. And then, we gave a good thinking and then made the response. And they're not even responding to it. That's how I feel. So I think it's a good idea to come up with another meeting. And then if we have some additional information between that we can share, I think that is good. Am I totally off? I don't know.
I don't think you're totally off.
Okay.
I do think that certainly, our recommendations were heard by some,
By some.
yeah, just not by all. I'm going to make a motion that we plan a special meeting to determine whether or not we wish to respond by before the June 2nd date. And if somebody will second that motion, we'll take a vote on it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded that a special meeting be held in order for us to have the opportunity to respond by the June 2nd deadline. Let's take a vote. Is there any further discussion before we take a vote?
Bob, I would just want to make sure that we're really clear on what we're discussing at the special meeting. So maybe if we could send something out in advance of, here are the things that we need to discuss, decisions that need to be made, because that'll give us all some time to think about it too.
Yeah. Well, we have to do that on the agenda anyway, Carrie. So yeah, that'll be there. It should be there. Hopefully as clearly as we might be able to make it. All right, I'm not hearing any objections to moving for any further discussion. So let's take a vote on holding a special meeting. Justina?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Eleni?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
Dan? And Ben may have had to step off. Meg?
Aye.
I vote aye. Napua?
Aye.
Mari?
Aye.
Carrie?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
Let me come back around. Ben, are you back? Yeah, all right. The measure is passed. We will hold a special session meeting to discuss our actions related to SB 1022 CD1. Okay, we'll move on. Matt, thank you for helping us out with that conversation and for everyone's
Yes,
participation.
and we kind of moved through the leadership update also.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Yeah,
They were back to back on purpose.
Okay.
So,
6 minutes, 6 minutes to spare.
yes, okay. We now have an opportunity for additional public comment. Is there any public comment? Dana, I see nothing in the chat. Do you see anything?
No.
Okay, and we'll move on to member updates. Are there any member updates?
Bob, I have one.
Okay,
Today is the last day of the COVID-19 public health emergency, declared emergency. A lot will happen after that for Medicare, Medicaid unwinding, access to vaccinations, like all this stuff is right in the influx, right? Because at some point, the COVID vaccination will not be provided by the federal government for free anymore, and it will become a commercial product, right? I mean, that's just how life is. The other thing is access to free self-test kits. Unknown how long that will continue. It may only continue while supplies are available, and then again, self-tests, if they're still manufactured, may be an out-of-pocket expense, or maybe something folks can explore with their insurance. But in bigger public health terms, just because the presidential declared public health emergency ends does not mean that COVID's gone, or there could be another something that comes up. So keep washing your hands, keep wearing your mask as an option if you feel that way. If you're ill or sick, consider not going to work or out in groups of people. If you do, consider wearing a mask. Again, wash your hands. Social distancing always works to reduce, not eliminate, transmission of respiratory infections. And just, we went through a lot since March of 2020, and let's hope we can continue moving forward and be ready for the next thing. So thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Any other member updates? All right. Then we will summarize the outcomes of this meeting, and then I'll ask Carrie to send us off with some good words. The outcomes of the meeting are, first of all, recognizing that Yuko on May 2nd completed her first full year as director. Congratulations. The second item is that the director input survey related to the director's evaluation will be emailed out on May 18th with directions, and will be due back to the chair by May 25th. The governance committee has been asked to put on its agenda discussion of transition practices once we have more information. And then finally, that we will schedule a special meeting in order to meet the June 2nd deadline should we want to provide any response to the governor related to SB 1022 CD1. Those are the outcomes for this meeting. And Carrie, some thoughts from you?
Sure. As an appreciation to all the board members and non-board members on the call, quote, "We had each other, that's how we won," by Lando Calrissian, The Rise of Skywalker.
Thank you. I know it's a busy time of year for everyone, so take a deep breath every once in a while. And remember to take care of yourself over the weeks that come forward. And I will get information out to you as soon as possible about the date to hold for a special meeting. Aloha, everyone. Thank you.